So the stoma down here, this is a singular word for this pore that goes up into the leaf and cross section. And again, that's allowing for gas exchange. What's going to go into the leaf? CO2, right? That's one of our ingredients for photosynthesis. Hey, what's going to come out? Oxygen, one of our waste products. What else is going to come out? No, ATP stays in. Water vapor. Remember, that's one of our byproducts of photosynthesis as well. All right, so looking at the actual stoma. This is like, instead of taking the leaf this way, we're putting it this way. And so this is what we see on the bottom side of the leaf. Our stoma, this right here, is a vacuole that holds water. So when the plant has lots and lots of water, which is a raw ingredient for photosynthesis, it's going to have the stoma open, which allows carbon dioxide to go into the leaf. And again, carbon dioxide, one of your ingredients for photosynthesis, is going to allow for an increased rate of photosynthesis. So carbon dioxide goes in, oxygen goes out, photosynthesis is happening when our stoma are open. Yes? Sorry? The stoma are the pores on the underside of the leaf. We had that in the previous diagram, but I said don't worry about detail because I'm going to show you detail. So this is what the stoma looks like when the plant has lots and lots of water and it's nice and open and allowing for oxygen to move out of the leaf and carbon dioxide to move in to continue driving the photosynthesis reaction. When the plant is desiccated, that means it doesn't have very much water. These vacuoles collapse because they don't have much water in them, and that automatically closes the pore. So the stoma itself is the actual hole that goes into the leaf. The guard cells, that's what these big green kind of jelly bean looking things are. The guard cells are what allow the stoma to be open or closed. When there's lots of water in the plant, these plump up, the vacuoles plump up, and they cause the stoma to open, the hole to open. When they get desiccated, when the plant gets low on water, it pulls the water out of these vacuoles and it closes the stoma, which decreases the amount of photosynthesis able to happen. Now, once these are closed, the plant can only photosynthesize until it runs out of carbon dioxide it already had stored up in its cells. Now, there are some plants called CAM plants, which stands for something acid metabolism, and the something is like a genus name, CAM, CAM. And these are plants that grow in really hot, dry climates, and they'll actually reverse this. Well, they'll a little bit reverse this. They will have the stoma closed during the daytime instead of at night. And by closing them during the daytime, they prevent the plant from losing a lot of water through evaporation. And then they'll have them open at night. So they'll get carbon dioxide at night when it's not so hot, so they don't run through water quite as quickly. It's a neat trick. Yes?
So
What exactly is the stoma? It's the hole that goes into the bottom of the leaf. The guard cells, so this part right here is your actual stoma. The hole that goes into the leaf, like a pore. The guard cells are what control whether that stoma is open or closed. Yes?
What's a stomata?
Stomata is the plural for stoma. So on the bottom of a leaf, you're going to have more than one stoma. You're going to have stomata. And then there's another form of the word called stomate, which is just describing like activities that are related to the stomata. It's a word that gets used in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So this opening and closing of the pore. Oh yeah, Alex. That purple thing doesn't matter. That's why I took the label off. Yeah, I'm trying to only give you things to write down that are actually useful to this conversation, so you don't have too much stuff. All right. So this opening and closing of the stoma is what allows for gas exchange. If the stoma are closed, no carbon dioxide goes in, no oxygen goes out. Although, as you might imagine, depending upon how much water loss the plant has incurred, it may be a little more open or a little less closed. It may not be fully shut. So this is kind of a continuum. It's not open or shut. It's a little bit open or a little bit shut, which means some carbon dioxide and oxygen exchange can occur, and it'll slow down the rate of photosynthesis but not shut it off altogether. This movement of material inside and outside, particularly water vapor, leaving is what's going to drive transportation of materials to the leaves. And we're going to talk about that in detail in just a second.
So the sallow is the green part.
Yes.
The light green part.
Yes.
Then what would the darker green part be?
I didn't label them because you don't need to know them.
No, I'm saying for the outside. Except the
This?
membrane, yeah.
It's just the outer membrane. All right, and I would like to show this to you as a micrograph so you can see what it actually looks like. And this is not much more detailed than what you're going to see in the micrograph. That's an actual electron microscope picture of what the stoma looks like. So you can see it's not a really complicated organelle or not a really complicated region. You've got the guard cells, you've got the either open or closed position. Questions? Awesome. Should I keep going or do you need me to reflect back on this one?
Could you go to the slide where it's all like?
All right. So we're going to talk about two actions that water takes to describe or to demonstrate how water moves from where it starts to where it ends up. This is called cohesion tension theory. And what that means is that the water that the plants use for photosynthesis, it rains and then the water lands on the leaves. That water doesn't go into the leaves. They don't absorb that water. They're getting all of their water from the soil. And they're getting all that water through the roots in the soil. But this, potentially, is a long way to go to get the leaves that are 100 feet up in the air. So let's look for just a minute at how this process works. Let's pretend that this is a giant tree. It's 100 meters tall. Big tree, right? So we have soil down here with roots in the soil. Depending upon how deep the water is, the root system might be really shallow because it doesn't have to go very deep for water, or it might be really deep if we're talking about like a baobab in Africa, where it's really, really dry. The roots go really, really deep. In some places where there's lots of water all the time, like mangroves, you might see the roots spreading out really far, but they don't go very deep. They don't have to. So we've got the water getting absorbed in the xylem, in the soil, and then it goes up the main stem. Xylem, Xylem, carries water. It's going to carry that water up to the leaves, and then in the leaves, when the water vapor leaves the leaves, we call that transpiration. Think of it as plant sweat. It's hot, you have more transpiration. It's not as hot, you have less transpiration. In humans, it's hot, you get more sweat. It's not as hot, you get less sweat. Slightly different process, but same result. So when there's a lot of transpiration, it's going to continue to draw the water up that trunk or up that stem at a faster rate. The more transpiration, the more water vapor that your plant produces, the higher the rate of transpiration. And potentially a higher rate of photosynthesis, but not every single time. If every chloroplast is busy every second doing its thing, giving it more water isn't going to make it work faster. Sort of like if I give you a plate of donuts and you are eating as fast as you can on that donuts, putting more donuts on the plate isn't going to make you eat faster. Unless there's somebody else who's going to eat them if you don't eat them, and then maybe that'll speed you up a little bit. Is this diagram making sense? We've got our roots, we've got our xylem that's going up the trunk, and we've got our leaves where the photosynthesis is happening that is drawing that water up. So let's consider why. Yes?
Where exactly in the roots would the xylem be located?
We're going to look at that in just a second. They're in the vascular bundles, and they actually move laterally through the whole thing. And it's like just a giant straw that ends. One end is at the leaf, and one end is under the soil. Yes.
When you said more transpiration happens, more absorption of water by the lipids.
Yes.
Is that because of the water pressure?
We're going to look at that in just a minute. It's actually because of the cohesive property of the water. So I've written down a few words to help you with the stuff that I just said to make sure you've captured this properly on paper. So transpiration, it's happening in the leaves, and it's water vapor leaving the leaves. When the stoma are closed, less water vapor leaves. When the stoma is open, more water vapor leaves. The reason the water leaves, and this is the only reason why I wanted you to know where mesophyll is because let's say that my hand is a leaf again, and the back of my hand is where the sun is shining. This side is going to get warmed up by direct exposure to sunlight. You all know that when water warms up, it turns from a liquid into a gas. It becomes a water vapor. So it heats up inside the mesophyll, becomes a gas, and leaves the stoma. Interesting little side note, the underside of the leaf is just a little fraction cooler than the side that's exposed to the sun because it's not in direct sunlight. You all know that, right? If you're in direct sunlight and it's hot, and then you move to the shade, you suddenly feel much cooler. So the underside of the leaf is a little bit cooler, and that's where the stoma are. The stoma are on the underside of the leaf, and that protects the rate of transpiration. It slows it down a little bit. If they were on the backside, then that hotter area is going to let more water vapor out more quickly. Yes? So if this is a leaf, my hand is a leaf, my knuckles are in the exposure of the sunlight. This is my upper epidermis. This is my lower epidermis, the one that's facing down to the ground out of sunlight. And there are some leaves, some plants that the orientation of the leaf makes it hard to tell what's an upper and what's a lower. If you looked at the leaf under a microscope, you'd actually be able to see the stoma if they're open. If they're closed, you can't tell. Usually you can tell by the leaf vein structure and stuff like that. All right. So water vapor, once it heats up in the mesophyll, is going to leave the stoma, or stomata, which is our plural. And it's that loss of water, it creates a little teeny tiny vacuum, a little teeny tiny negative pressure, so that the water leaving the stoma is kind of like water leaving the top of the straw. And it's going to pull water up from the roots or from the bottom of the straw. And the reason for that is cohesion. And the property of cohesion is that the hydrogen bonds in the water, they bond to other water molecules. And so if I wanted to, Patiti, can I use your name as an example? Okay. So let's say that I wanted to get Patiti to do something, but I'm way over here and I can't get her to actually do it. Let's say I want to wake her up, she's falling asleep, her head's totally laying on the keyboard, she's getting little keyboard marks in her forehead, and I want to wake her up, and I pull on James a little bit, hey James, pull on Irina, pull on Shinyan, pull all the way around the corner there, and eventually it's going to get to her. The same kind of tug, hydrogen is pulling on the neighboring molecule, which pulls on the neighboring molecule, which pulls on the neighboring molecule, and it connects them together. And that's how we get water leaving the leaf, or the top of the straw, to pull potentially 100 feet down from the roots, to get that water up and out of the leaf. I'm going to show you a diagram of that in just a second, get you a little more detail on that. So again, the more transpiration we have coming out of the leaves, the more the rate of movement of material inside this tree or the plant is going to increase. So if it's really, really hot out and the tree is transpiring a lot, what's going to happen ultimately to that tree's access to water? It might take it all up, right? If it's rainy and it's going to constantly replenish the soil, the water in the soil, the tree's in good shape. If it's a dry time period and it's transpiring a lot, it's losing a lot of water, it's not going to have more water at the base to get. So it can potentially end up dying because it's consumed all that water. Yes?
So with a certain point where the negative pressure pulls on the water molecule,
Yeah.
you can say that's attributed to cohesion.
That's because of transpiration. Yeah, and cohesion. Yeah. So the loss of water at the top is transpiration, and the connectedness of the water molecules is cohesion. Almost like I knew you were going to need to know that. Let's talk about cohesion. Yes?
Why do plants die when they have too much access to water?
Can we talk about, hold that question until we get done with adhesion and cohesion? I will totally answer that. All right, so cohesion. Again, this is the hydrogen bonds of one water molecule and the polarity attracting the next neighboring water molecule. Sticks them together. Now, each of these hydrogen bonds is pretty weak all by itself, but when you put them all together, you're able to have a much higher strength and a much increased tension on each water molecule. Sort of like Shinyoung, can I use you as an example? Let's say Shinyoung and I are going to get into a tug of war. We're each on one side of the rope. I may not be able to pull him across the line. And if you're not allowed to touch the rope, how could you help me to pull Shinyoung across the line? Push him, shove him over. Okay, what's another way that my model is? Instead of pushing, what can you do? Pull me, right? Get behind me and pull on my hair, or pull on my leg, or pull on my shirt, or maybe I have a belt on that's going to help you out. So without touching the rope, or without touching the bottom of the water, this cohesion allows you to tug on each molecule and pull them up to the top of the water column. And this is happening in the xylem. XYLEM. Now, one of the ways that I remember xylem from phloem, as far as what it's transporting, xylem is transporting water, and X and Y are both at the end of the alphabet. Phloem is transporting food, and they both start with the same sound. Not the same spelling, but the same sound. So food would be glucose going down to the roots, and xylem is taking water up. Xylem and water, X, Y, Z. All right. So this cohesive property happens because here's a cute little water molecule. The hydrogen of the neighboring molecule is trying to form a bond with the oxygen. Puts a little bit of a pull on the neighboring molecule. And this neighboring molecule is attempting to bond with this neighboring molecule and this neighboring molecule. And so again, a gentle pull is keeping each molecule, which hopefully you know is bigger than a water droplet, keeping each molecule moving in the same direction. Yes?
Is this hydrogen bonds or hydrogen bonded?
These are hydrogen bonds. Okay. So let me show you a little demonstration I put together last Friday that kind of represents this. I have these glasses that just have water and food coloring in them. And last Friday when I set them up, I had a blue glass, and I had a yellow glass, and I had a red glass. And then I had two empty glasses in between them. Then I put the paper towels in. The paper towel absorbs that water through capillary action. And as soon as that connection is made, the water up here is still drawing the water out of that container because all those little water molecules are connected. So now what has happened to this middle one, in between the blue and the yellow, it did not have any water in it. What color is that water? Green, because it's pulling water from both sides. And blue and yellow make green. And then right over here, what color is this one? It used to be empty. It's orange now, so we know, we can see that it's pulled water from both the red and the yellow. And if I allow this to continue indefinitely, we can expect that all the levels of water in each of the containers is going to be equal. We can already see it on this side right over here. This one, the blue one, for some reason, was a little higher amounts. But I set them up at the same time, and I've just been letting them run. So we can see that the water molecules are drawing their neighboring molecules with them. And then pulling the molecule after that and the molecule after that. Set this right here as well. Centerpiece for your table. Questions? Okay, so once all those water molecules are pulling on each other, we end up with water droplets forming, which is hopefully you know more than one water molecule. But it is just the most efficient way for all these water molecules to stay connected. And you all know, I'm sure you've played with water drops on a glass or a plant. You add just a little bit more water and all of a sudden it collapses. The weight is too big, so it can't hold up indefinitely. But it is an efficient structure for storing water. Oh, okay. All right. So I'll back it up. This is just an example of what I'm talking about with a water droplet. The water molecules sticking to each other is an example of cohesion. When water molecules. So let's look at the structure of xylem. I'm going to talk to you and then I'll let you draw. Okay, so I want you to understand what your choices are in drawing. This over here represents a stem. So around the stem you have areas where you have vascular bundles. The vascular bundles are made up of both xylem and phloem. Don't draw until I'm done. I promise you. You're going to have some interpretation to do. All right, so on this very thin brown line here, which this word cambrium is pointing to, these are living cells that are dividing. On the inside, these cambrium cells are producing xylem cells. On the outside, they're producing phloem cells. In this diagram, this large diagram right here, these are the cambrium cells. The xylem cells and the phloem cells are not living. Once they're produced, they are not living, which means the plant is not expending any energy in maintaining expensive organelles or cell division in here. They're intensifying the energy expense on living cells on the cambrium. It's a very thin layer. Now, if you were to ever pull, if you pull bark off of a tree and you see like a sticky residue, that's part of the cambrium. So you can't actually see it with the eye. It's enough cells that you can see. And in fact, if you're familiar with beavers, one of the activities that they do is they pull bark off of trees and eat the bark. And what they're actually eating is the cambrium. Apparently, cambrium, it's like sticky taffy. It's a little bit sweet. It's not a main source of food. You can't live on taffy alone. A beaver cannot live on cambrium alone, but they like the taste. There's extra sugar in there and extra energy. Yeah, Alex?
It's sweet to humans as well.
I don't know. I have never tried eating it. You go ahead and let us know. All before you actually become sick. Wait, no, we can't experiment on humans. All right. So we got our xylem on the inside. We got our phloem on the outside. Xylem cells, when they retire on a tree, they actually form the pith. So this central core of the tree is non-living material item. And on the tree, this provides structural support for the leaves to get up really high and get that sunlight early. On a stem like a sunflower, it still provides strength to the plant to get a little bit taller. So if we look over here at the xylem is a long, skinny cell. The end walls of the xylem are actually quite thin, which enhances or increases the ability of water to move across this and up. Again, these cells together are acting kind of like a straw when you stack them all up. And there's a little bit of a filter through the end, but there's not too much wall here, so that too much effort is expended to get the water up. And in fact, movement of water does not require any expensive ATP. It's passive. And it's being drawn by that negative space in the leaves that results from transpiration. The cell walls on the side are actually quite thick, and that again provides a little bit of structural support for the xylem to go up to keep that straw nice and strong. And that also keeps the straw from collapsing or the xylem from collapsing when there's a lack of water. So they're a consistently present structure all the time. Kind of like your trachea. You know how your trachea has little rings on it to keep it from collapsing? But your esophagus can actually go quite flat. So when you're not swallowing, your esophagus is not this really big thing. Which is why if you swallow a big chunk of food, you can actually feel it going down, because your esophagus doesn't have that internal support. But you don't want your trachea ever collapsing. That's bad. You want to keep that open. Same thing with the xylem. It's got that structure to help keep it open. All right, now I'll stop talking, and you can draw what out of that you feel the need to draw. That will help you remember stuff. I wanted to make sure I was clear on, because I haven't mentioned this yet with the arrows. The xylem material only travels from the roots to the leaves. Water is never going to travel backwards down this path. It's a one-way street. Generally speaking, phloem is a one-way street, and that direction is usually from leaf, where the photosynthesis is happening and the glucose is being made, down to the roots for storage. However, at the beginning of a growing season, when the plant is putting out new little teeny tiny cute little baby leaves, energy will flow in the opposite direction from the roots to the leaves, give that first little bit of energy out there until the leaf is big enough to make enough photosynthesis so that no more energy needs to go from the roots to the leaves. So phloem is usually one way, but at certain times of the year, when the traffic is really heavy, it can go in the opposite direction. Yeah, James.
When they're like baby plants, how does the root give up energy for them?
So in the seed initially, like if we're starting from a very seed, there's a little bit of energy in that seed packet for the growing seedling, and then as soon as the first little leaves come out, you hope that first little leaf comes out in time to take over the energy production from the energy that's present in the seed packet. If not, then the plant doesn't grow. So if it doesn't get leaves fast enough, it dies. Okay, so here's some words that go along with all that stuff that we just talked about, just to make sure you've got these concepts clear. Cells are non-living. So there's no energy required in the process of transporting water. There's no cytoplasm, no organelles inside the xylem, so nothing has to get in the way of water transportation. The cell walls are thickened to the side, arranged end to end like a big old straw. And then the cell walls in between those are thinned out. This is where we're going to end today. The next time that I see you guys, we'll talk briefly about adhesion, which is another facet of support for movement of water.